What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the June 26, 2021 edition of Talking Smack. Coming off what I thought was kind of an eventful edition of SmackDown, between Edge coming back at the end. We had two new Money in the Bank participants revealed for the men and women, that being Big E for the men, and then the women, Carmella. And that's exactly who we had here on the show. We had Big E on Talking Smack this week. We had Carmella on the show this week, talking about their wins and qualifying for Money in the Bank. And Seth Rollins, so not Edge, but the man who was upset that Edge is getting the next shot at the Universal Championship at the pay-per-view. So a very good episode of Talking Smack this week, I thought, and filling in for Heyman, unfortunately, this week, and not because of who replaced him, but because Heyman wasn't there, was Pat McAfee. It was very entertaining. He was insightful. He was great. They did make note that Heyman will likely be back next week. Kayla was gone for a week a few weeks ago. They never really acknowledged that, and she was back the week later. So I'm hoping it's a one-week thing. I love Pat McAfee, so if Heyman is gone for good, then McAfee is a good substitute for him. They've had a lot of good co-hosts alongside Kayla here on the show, between The Miz and Sami Zayn, and now they've had Heyman for a while, and he's been great. But that being said, though, I do love the Heyman-Kayla connection, that chemistry, that dynamic between the two, so I would be disappointed they replaced Heyman full-time. But if they were going to fill in that spot with anyone else, Pat McAfee would be a great fit, because I thought he and Kayla had great chemistry here, and he was very entertaining as well. So he also talks about the Thunderdome and how he's excited to be back in front of fans like the rest of us are, just because he's actually never performed in front of WWE as a commentator, as a wrestler. And he doesn't say wrestler, but because he's been with WWE for a few years now, but his real stint in the last year has taken place in the Thunderdome for NXT and now as a commentator for SmackDown. So he's looking forward to that. They then spend some time recapping the end of the show that saw Edge come back, lay out Roman Reigns, lay out Jimmy Uso, kind of setting himself up for a Universal Championship opportunity at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And they also recap Baron Corbin, not King Corbin, being despondent after Shinsuke Nakamura was named the new king of WWE, and they even called him Kinsuke Nakamura, which I talked about in my SmackDown audio review. I missed it, but Rick Boogs called him that on SmackDown. They even say that in the WWE.com recap. So if that's what they're calling him now, that is incredibly stupid. I mean, the King shit is bad enough, but calling him Kinsuke Nakamura just sounds incredibly dumb. McAfee also recaps or also discusses going back to Corbin to his peasant days from when he shared the football field and stuff like that, which was funny. But the first guest they have here on the show is Carmella, who reiterates, as she said for many months now, that she's the most beautiful woman in WWE. That's her current gimmick. She insults Kayla's looks while she's at it, so getting good heel heat there. She says that Liv Morgan, despite beating her twice in the last couple of weeks, first of all, she got lucky, and that Liv Morgan has never been in a Money in the Bank ladder match. Carmella, however, has been in 4, and she's won 2 of them, which is technically true. She says that she's a 2-time Miss Money in the Bank, which, again, I don't think is official, but she claims that she is, having won the first one and having the controversy with James Ellsworth winning the briefcase and giving it to Carmella, so she had to win another ladder match to kind of retain the briefcase, which they actually acknowledge here. Kayla brings up the 2017 controversy over Carmella becoming Miss Money in the Bank, so I'm glad that wasn't forgotten about here. But yeah, she said that Morgan got lucky with her win a few weeks ago, and then again this week, and that wins and losses don't matter. She said that she loved her gear and whatever, and that the fact that Morgan beat her doesn't even matter. And I thought for a second that Vince was in her ear telling her that, because that is the mindset of a lot of the people in this company, that wins and losses don't matter. That was the real takeaway from the Carmella segment for me on this show. And that was really about it. So the next person they had on was Big E, who talks about how you never forget your first, and I'm making the obvious joke there, because this is his first Money in the Bank ladder match. Kofi's been in quite a few. I don't think Woods has ever been in one. Big E has not. He's been at Money in the Bank many times before, but in tag team matches, and never, and never as a singles in the ladder match itself. So that's a big deal for him. And he's looking forward to that. And he even acknowledges that he's been in a bit of a lull since WrestleMania after losing the Intercontinental Championship, losing his baby, as he calls it, and kind of suffering loss after loss, but kind of getting back on track here and beating a familiar foe in Apollo Crews, who he's beaten before, and he's been beaten by him. And it was satisfying for him to get that semblance of vengeance over his longtime rival in Apollo Crews, that being the Intercontinental Champion. He didn't mention going back after the title, so I'm hoping, as I said in my audio review of SmackDown, that they're moving past that and they're not giving... It is stupid that he wouldn't get a title shot, even though he just pinned the champion, but I'm hoping because it was a qualifying match, that's why, they're just ignoring the fact that he won't get a title shot, because I don't want to see him get another title shot. We've done this feud to death. We got to move on. So I'm hoping that's it for him. But he wants to speak it into existence, and he wants to be Mr. Money in the Bank. He vows that he will win Money in the Bank and come to ringside and tease cashing in, only to not to, because he's just going to watch from ringside or whatever. And it was great. He and McAfee had some great chemistry here. He and Pat were kind of going back and forth, and he asked Pat. I don't think this was planned. I think this was Biggie just kind of going off the cuff. But he asked Pat when he was getting back in the ring, because we haven't seen Pat wrestle since that TakeOver show back in December, the War Games show. And he talks about that and blah, 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 and they kind of go off about it. And Pat said that he couldn't walk for a month after that last match that he had, even though he turned some heads. And Biggie really wants to see him wrestle again, which I thought was cool. So at the very end of the show here, before they welcome on Rollins, they hype up Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn next week in a last man standing match to hopefully finish their feud, with the winner earning a spot in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. So Rollins was the last guest here on the show, in a very good mood. He's in a happy mood because he thought he was promised a title shot on SmackDown from Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce, because they were inclined to agree with him that he might have been next in line for a championship opportunity. And he talks about how he's rolling right now. He went on SmackDown, he went in Hell in the Cell, and he shout out Fred Durst, because, the whole Limp Bizkit Rollin' song that they used for the Undertaker American Badass character many, many years ago. So yeah, he says that he was promised a title shot, but then before they can kind of go any further with that, they have breaking news and breaking footage from Edge from right after SmackDown went off the air, of Edge bursting into the office of Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce, not asking, but demanding the match that he should have gotten at WrestleMania against Roman Reigns one-on-one for the Universal Championship at Money in the Bank. And they say, you got your match. And they just kind of give it to him. They make it official here. And Rollins is in complete disbelief. He can't believe it at first. He thought it was an error. And then when he comes to find out that it is indeed official for the pay-per-view, he just kind of goes off. He loses his mind. He starts screaming. And Pat's like, Edge didn't want a triple threat, and this is what he wants. And Rollins is like, I don't care what Edge wants. I don't care if it was a triple threat at WrestleMania. I don't care if they had a Daniel Bryan. That's not my fault. That's not my problem. I earned this shot. I have been here for the last 6 months, busting my ass in here every single week, winning my last couple of matches. I have deserved this opportunity. So like I said in my SmackDown audio review, this seems to set up Edge and Rollins for SummerSlam. Now, Edge in that quick clip confronting Adam and Sonya backstage came across like a heel. He said he was demanding the match that he should have had at WrestleMania. And he kind of came across like the same Edge that we were seeing before he left in the spring. Kind of like that heelish edge to him, and not like a full-on Edge, not like a full-on heel, but more of like on the heel side than a babyface. So I'm sure he'll become a full-fledged babyface again during the course of the Roman feud. You got to set up that Rollins match for SummerSlam. So I assume that's what we're seeing here. Rollins will get pissed that Edge is getting the next shot, cost him the match. Maybe they suspend Rollins for a month and bring him back. And they set up Rollins and Edge for the SummerSlam pay-per-view, which to me makes the most sense, and I think that can be a great match. And you can also play out the history of Rollins almost ending Edge's career and life about 7 years ago on Raw. So I'm looking forward to that. I thought this was great and an awesome performance by Rollins. Very good episode of Talking Smack overall, setting some stuff up for next week, featuring the fallout from the show with both Big E and Carmella qualifying. Rollins kind of going off on Edge, and we also got a notable announcement that Roman and Edge is now official for Money in the Bank for the Universal Championship. So great stuff here, really enjoyable show. I was worried that it wouldn't be as strong as usual because Pat McAfee replaced Heyman, and again, that's not a knock on Pat. I thought Pat was great here ultimately, but Heyman has been kind of the glue that has kept the show together now for a while. Even as good as the show is, Heyman has been kind of like the crown jewel of Talking Smack since he's been on. But Pat was great. He and Kayla had great chemistry, and it was a very enjoyable episode overall. So check out the full episode over on Peacock. Talking Smack, June 26, 2021, serving as the setup for next week, which again is going to feature Zayn and Owens' last man standing match for the Money in the Bank ladder match for the men. So good stuff here. If they have to replace Heyman for one more week with Pat, I think that's perfectly fine because Pat did such a great job. Maybe at some point he can take over for Heyman, but hopefully not anytime soon because that Paul and Kayla dynamic is still really strong. But good stuff here. Check it out when you get a chance. But that's the review for June 26, 2021 edition of Talking Smack. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.